Hi, how's everyone out there doing today? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager Life as a Project and The Consummate Communicator Character Traits of True Professionals. I am here with Peter Taylor, and it's a super great experience because Peter is the lazy project manager. So I'm very curious kind of as to what that means. And Peter, what inspired you to write The Lazy Project Manager?
Oh, that's easy. My boss insulted me one day, and I was very upset. No, we worked together across three companies, and he was just talking about moving on, and I was running a PMO at that time, and he just said, "Well, okay, what is there anything else you want to do in life?" And I said, "I want to speak, I want to write." He said, "You could do that." He said, "But you are the laziest person I've ever met," and I was really upset. But I realized he was saying a nice thing. It was kind of, this concept in the book of the productive laziness. And he was right. It was a way of working. So that's how it came about.
Great. And so, in your experience after writing and then talking about the lazy project manager, what advice do you have for project managers?
It is that. It is. I mean, one of the challenges of being a project manager is you get so involved, so in deep with everything that's going on. And I always tell project managers, you've got to elevate yourself every now and then. You've got to lift yourself away from all of the noise, all of the people for a period of time. Just regularly check where you're going, because you're supposed to be a leader. And some of the worst behavior I've seen, and I was responsible for it myself in my early days. I had to be involved in every meeting, every decision, every piece of paper, every document. It was crazy, and I was killing myself. I was working ridiculous hours. And so, always think about that. Always think about how you can elevate yourself and look ahead and lead your project team. And it doesn't mean you're remote. It doesn't mean you're distant from your project team. No. But it means you're supporting them. But every now and then, look ahead.
Okay. And a lot of the conversation I've had recently has had to do with stakeholder management in projects. As a lazy project manager, how might you address stakeholder management?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about that in the book. I specifically talk about sponsors because it's one of the most critical kind of relationships you have. I mean, I hate to break it to all of you project managers out there, but you are not the most important person on the project. The project sponsor is. I know, shocking. You could probably close the broadcast down right now because there's people shouting at me right now. So I talk about your project sponsor. That relationship is so critical. So that's where I put a lot of effort in, and I talk about it. When you first get together with your project sponsor, if you've never worked with them before, find out about them. We can talk to other project managers who they've worked with. What is their style? What is their understanding? Because it doesn't necessarily mean they're a great project sponsor. They know that community is struggling. So engage that way. It's true of all stakeholders. The more you know about them, and the more you talk to people directly and indirectly in a nice way. I mean, I'm not talking about hiring private investigators to find dish the dirt on them. I'm talking about consciously discussing and talking to people and finding out, and then you'll understand them, understand where they come from. And one last thing on sponsors, I always say that first meeting, ask them two important questions. What do they hope this project will deliver? What are their concerns, hopes and fears? Very open questions. You'll get a real feeling of how much they're connected and believe in this project.
Now, those are really, really good points about project stakeholders. What would you say is your difference in your approach when you say that you're a lazy project manager to sort of, your traditional, PMI, Prince project management principles?
Look, all I'm talking. The best way the book has been described is about managing yourself whilst you're managing projects. And so my concept of productive laziness is just working smarter, not harder. It's finding the most efficient way of doing something. And that can apply to just project management and beyond project management, of course. It's just finding the most efficient way of doing something. What is the minimal viable need of anything you need to do? What is the right level of your involvement? How much should you trust your team and delegate? Of course, I mean, that was the other huge mistake I made in my early days. I didn't delegate anything. I micromanaged everything, which was just ridiculous. So it's really about that. It's about finding that smart way of working.
So you bring up a lot there, the really great points about how you have to have the ability to communicate with your team, to delegate. How do you develop communication techniques with the teams that you've been a part of, or what have you seen be effective for communications?
Okay, well, let's start. And again, I do like to, probably break it to the people out there that reporting is not communicating. Reporting is not communicating. In fact, you can produce the most beautiful 16-page report with every diagram and graph and beautiful font layouts and imagery and every data point, and you send it to everybody on the project and their best friend, probably means you have actually communicated to absolutely nobody. And communication is about right information at the right time, to the right person, in the right way. And you have to get all 4 of those things right. Otherwise, you will fail. So, whilst I say I'm a lazy project manager, communication is huge. I mean, the project managers, we spend 60, 70, 80% of our time communicating in some way. That's where you put the effort in, is finding the most efficient and effective way to communicate with every key stakeholder on the project. And that might mean you have to communicate in different ways. You cannot blanket the world out there. So my best advice is, think about, again, how you're communicating with people, talk to them, understand what it is they want, when they want it, how they best communicate. Amy, you might love a face-to-face phone call. Somebody else might like a bullet point email. Somebody else would like a PowerPoint 5-box summary. We are all different, but communication is so important to project managers.
You bring up a really good point on communications. And the other thing that you brought up in delegation is this kind of implied thing. You have to be able to trust your team. You have to trust when you delegate. How do you develop trust in teams, or what have you seen be effective on other projects?
I think what trust is, trust comes about by demonstrating trust. The fact you trust them makes it, and then the trust will grow. I mean, we all know. There's a Tupman model of team development, and the forming, storming, norming, performing, journeying is the 5th one. At the end of it, etc. Teams are a little bit more dynamic than that. We have resources coming and going constantly. It's kind of like a disrupting overlay phase I talk about, but really, demonstrate it. Reach out to the team. And I think one of the great things I'm seeing right now is the rise in social collaborative tools inside the workplace, because it's no longer me talking to you on your own. It's no longer me talking to 5 people in a meeting room. That world's gone completely, hasn't it? The social tools, the digital tools, allow so many people to have comments and input on a very level playing field. And I think that, again, is a major step forward for project management and business in general.
So, Peter, one of the things that's very interesting, I'm looking at our feed right now, and we have people from Botswana, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, all over the world tuning into this. What is your advice, or have you had any experience working on multinational teams? And what's your advice on communicating to people who might not be speaking the same language or might be in different time zones?
Think about it. You've got to think about it. It's all about culture. It's all about language. It's all about time. So, when you're working on a team like that, and I've worked on a number of projects around the world. And the first thing is, I speak English. I only speak English. I'm fortunate that I speak the international business language. But I've worked with some amazing people, in Scandinavia, in Europe, in America, and Canada, and Brazil, and Australia, and I could keep going. And the first thing is, you just remember they are translating. They're working hard at translating into English. So my first advice is, bear that in mind. Realize that towards the end of the day, they're getting tired, like you get tired, but they are constantly trying to process stuff. More mistakes are made at that point. Re-emphasize everything visually. Re-emphasize things by repeating. All of that really helps. Consider culture. Absolutely. Again, I talk a lot about fun and stuff, and what I do is, again, however you're communicating, whatever style you've got, you understand the culture and ask the questions of a friendly face, if you like, in that culture. Is this right? Am I putting it across properly? Are people understanding me? And then time, respect time. I worked on a big project where there was a team right around the world, and we suddenly realized that the poor guy in Australia was literally sitting in bed with a cup of coffee, trying to stay awake 11 o'clock at night to have this regular bi-weekly call. It was doing him no good, and he was critical to us. So we actually broke the world down into no more than 2 major time zones. We pulsed around the world, repeating calls. So there was like a chain reaction. Now, it slowed things down, absolutely, but it absolutely improved the quality of communication and decisions we had. So think about all of those things, all the time. And my last tip on this one is, if you're doing a regular project call like I was doing, hand over the ownership of that call to different countries. Let them lead the call. Let them showcase something that's about their world, their culture, their language, their town, city, wherever they are. And it brings a lot of trust and commitment into that virtual team.
Now, that's a really good point. And what I can tell you is that Peter and I have never met. We've only been corresponding and communicating with each other in the virtual space. And just something as small as coordinating a meeting and this interview, we had to constantly go back and forth and make sure, we're getting the time zones right. And the other complicating factor that happened too is in America, we switched already to our standard time from our daylight savings time in the middle of our correspondence. And so it's really a matter of communicating those kind of fine details to each other to make sure that you can get things right.
Oh yeah, I made a mistake. Public holidays is a classic. Yeah, I mean, why the world can't change their clocks at the same time? I have no idea. But we always have that crazy period of time. Outlook and stuff like that. It's really good these days by handling it. But I made a mistake. Yeah, I set up a meeting, etc., and I did not realise that this was actually a holiday in India, and they were too polite to tell me. And I was horrified afterwards that I was making them come onto a call, and so that was my ignorance, and I was very apologetic afterwards. But this is where you need the kind of understanding.
Now, that's a really great point. So I'm going to kind of shift a little bit. We've been focused a lot on different soft skills, trust and communication, which are super important. Mm-hmm. But when you're working on big projects, international projects, what do you find the commonalities to be technically wise? What are people out there using? You mentioned Outlook as one of the tools, which is a pretty convenient tool. But what else are we using now?
Oh, I mean, there's just a whole range. I mean, this is one of the challenges actually. Like, there is just so much out there. I mean, I'm doing some work right now with a company that helps you select, your project management tool set, and they're dealing with all of the major suppliers, and there are nearly 400 out there. It's just, and these are the ones that they're aware of constantly. They're emerging ones as well. I don't know what I can say in this. Is typically what I can say is when I've set up a PMO, and I've run some of the biggest PMOs in the world, which has been a fantastic experience. But one of the things I've always done is we've always just used the tools that were available to begin with. And this is best advice I can give you, is that once you understand what you need, then you can describe it, and then you can go and find it. The second thing is listen to your people. Some of the best tools that we ended up using in my last company I worked for came through the project managers themselves saying, "Hey, I found this, and this is really neat, and I think this could help us." So I think be very open on these kind of tools. But I've used a whole range, and they all have strengths and they all have weaknesses. But it's an incredibly dynamic market, so trying to keep up is really, really difficult.
No, I think that's a good point, is, use a tool that works for the team and what's already available. A lot of times I think people get so caught up into the tool that they forget about the project themselves.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, if you go for one of the big enterprise ones, it can overwhelm you absolutely. And again on tools, the best thing you can do also is standardize. If I joked about project reports. If you've got reports coming in Excel and PowerPoint and Word, you've got to standardize. That's one of the key things. Have it use one of these tools you've got, and be consistent in the way that you are reporting things and getting project managers to register details, etc.
So, we've kind of talked about tools. We've talked about reporting. What is your advice on effective reporting? You've kind of went over like the 16-page reports that are overkill. What actually works? How can you communicate effectively through reporting? Because we all have to still report on our projects.
Well, we do have to report on our projects. I think you've got to find something that just scales according. I mean, my biggest challenge, again, was running the PMOs. One of the biggest PMOs, we were running several thousand projects a year around the world. It was huge, and several hundred project managers. But when you're reporting within the project, you're reporting to the PMO, you're reporting to the stakeholders, you're reporting to the clients in that case, and also they're trying to report to the executives inside the organizations. You can't, one size doesn't fit all. The executives do not want your multi-page, your multi-slide update, but their attention span is like one slide, maybe another one with some financials on it. We're done. And so again, you've got to be really effective. It's back to what I said. It's think about your audience, thinking about the recipient of that communication information, and find the best way of presenting it to them. I know, one of the things that project managers complain about is having to duplicate data, repeat data, re-enter into different systems. You've got to try and avoid that at all cost. But communication is, and I go back to it, right information, right person, right time, delivered in the right way. There is no variable to that. That's what you have to do.
So, Peter, in the project management world right now, there's a big debate going on between traditional and agile project management. And I was wondering to kind of just get your thoughts on traditional versus agile, and what's the merits, or, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh goodness me! What a can of worms! Look, I've been in project management for a long time, very many years. All right, I have never ever delivered what might be a traditional or might be described as a waterfall project ever. There has always been a degree of iteration, repetition. I've been involved in creating methodologies for billion-dollar companies, and we've always evolved something that fitted us. I mean, the last one we joked, we actually said it was called Glagile, which was gated, lean, agile. So basically, for legality and contractual basis, there were gates, there were stage gates. We just had to have them. Visually, if you showed it to any of our clients, it looked waterfall because that is a world they understand. Behind it was a constant iteration of activities. Everything we did inside it, we made as lean as possible. So that's why we joked. It was kind of a Glagile thing. So I think, personally, all of the projects I've worked on, I would say were hybrid in some way, and that works for me. I have never been in software development or an area that would probably totally fit agile. So I've never worked in a pure agile way. But that's my view. Hybrid it is.
No, I think that's a really important point. And a lot of the community who tunes into the project management channel are in construction projects. And you can imagine that construction has a more traditional approach than like a software company would. And I'm in IT and cyber, so that lends itself to being more agile than construction, because certainly when you're going to build a building, you need the foundation first and then you build on it. You cannot have too much flexibility. There's basic, physics being applied.
Yeah, that's true. And I must say, I've worked in most industries, but I've not worked in construction. I've always said construction, to me, appears to be different in some way. So I couldn't really comment about that.
Okay, so I'm kind of looking at the time here, and we're about halfway through our session. I'm looking through some of the different questions on that we're getting in. And so one of the things is, as project managers, we're often in a place where we know that when the project ends, that we might have to actually go look for a new position, because when that project ends, maybe that's going to be the end of the time that you're with that company. What's your advice for project managers on transitioning, for looking for new positions, and making sure that their skills are always out there and marketable, especially in this global economy that we've been talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, global economy and obviously incredibly tough times right now. So, I mean, I think two things is, networking, constantly networking. It's one of those things you don't wait until the end of your project or towards the end of your project to reinvigorate your networking constantly. I mean, there's just so much out there. There's all of the project community chapter and regional and meetings, etc., and communities there. Huge amount that's obviously now, remote based. LinkedIn is awash of groups for various groups of focusing on various parts of project management. I'm constantly on LinkedIn, so if anybody out there isn't connected to me, send me an invitation. I'll happily accept it. Read, attend the conferences. Again, I suppose one of the advantages is, and I'm a professional speaker, so I'm kind of missing the travel, but one of the advantages of this new situation is there is just so much that's available digitally and remote. So constantly go out there and find stuff to do, and focus on it, and then be strong in documenting what you have achieved and get references and comments from people.
So that's a lot of really good points. If you don't mind, Peter, what I'm going to do is get your LinkedIn information and share it with the community.
Okay.
And I'll put that into the notes. So Peter just invited everybody. Please link into Peter. He puts out some just super great content, and a really good point about using these digital tools that are available all across the world. So your LinkedIn information is out there.
Okay.
Really great point that, like, I've never met Peter. I went out there. I have some connections in the project management community, and we are always looking for speakers and participants, authors to come onto the show. Two of the things that we're doing is a series on authors, which Peter is on, and another series which we're doing is successful projects is what we're calling it. And we're actually debating too, maybe we should do one called failed projects. And because sometimes we learn just as much as from our failures as our successes.
Yeah, that's very true. I worked on a project for the biggest one I've ever done was nearly 3 years. It had every scale of success and failure, and I just learned so much from that experience. I mean, we were successful in the end, but yeah, just a brilliant learning experience.
Yeah, and I know that next week we're going to be having Oliver Lehman on the show, and he's going
Oh,
to
I know
contrast.
Oliver.
Yeah, he's terrific, isn't he? And
Um,
so he's going to talk about the Stuttgart train station, which is actually where I used to live, and then the Berlin train station, and how one was a very, very successful project, and the other was not a very successful project.
oh, please.
And
Well, when he comes on, please tease him about the Berlin airport that's 9 years late.
the Berlin airport that's 9 years late. I will make sure I give him that one.
Say hi from me.
Definitely. No, and that's the thing too, is I mean, if you're looking at this, Germany, America, UK, the people that we have out here right now, I mean, it's really a global community, and this gives us such a great opportunity to take advantage of the fact that people are doing so much more remote than they were ever doing before. There was so
Yeah.
much before where in order to do things like this, we were like, oh, we should go fly to see each other, meet up in some sort of conference. But right now we have this great opportunity. So it doesn't matter if you're in Botswana, if you're in Uzbekistan, this virtual forum is a great place for sharing.
Oh, totally. And don't be afraid. I mean, one of the things I will reflect on is when I started out in, not in project management, when I started out, beginning to write about project management, I reached out to some really famous people out there. And pretty much every single one of them came back and offered what advice they can. I mean, you can't give too much. I mean, I get quite a lot of questions and contacts on a regular basis. You do your best. But I think everybody's just been really polite and helpful, and they pointed me in the right direction. And so don't be afraid to talk to people.
That's just a really good point. Whether it's looking for a new job at the end of your project, or, the general networking, or, branching out. I mean, the nice thing is, we have our day jobs, running projects, and then, things like this, and writing books about project management and sharing back to the community, which are all like just really, really important activities that we can do. So there's a question here on how to enrich your knowledge with project management. And the first thing I'm going to say is read Peter's book and read my book. But shamelessly beyond that, what's your other advice, Peter, on how do you get more project management knowledge?
Yeah, really. Well, everybody has different learning styles, but for me, it's doing. I have to do stuff to learn. And so, I'm right now, I'm very excited about AI and project management. So I'm actually working with some AI technology companies to see where this is going. Anything else for me just wouldn't work. But, find your own sort of learning style. And it will be out there, whether as I said, where it's like, attending webinars or coming on to, group meet calls, or whether it's actually going to, eventually going to physical meetings, reading books, watching video. I mean, there's just a ton. I mean, when I think back to when I did start in project management, when I realized I was a project manager for the first time, there was nothing. There was a few pretty dry, boring books, which is one of the reasons I wrote The Lazy Project Manager. And that was it, really. And I felt very isolated, very remote. There is no reason to feel like that now. There is just so much out there. Go find it. Go and find it.
Definitely. And I'll share some more resources on the site later on, things like the Project Management Cafe that Elizabeth runs, who's been on the show in the past. So many great groups out there doing project management too, some great YouTube videos on project management, and real opportunities to just get very low cost and free knowledge. And I know that that's a lot of the focus that people are asking is, how do I get things that are low cost or free knowledge? And so there's so much out there, so much content today that you can get globally.
Yeah, I mean, just an example. I mean, in the next month, I got 3 free webinars coming up, talking about various aspects of project management. I'm just one example. I mean, there's hundreds of me out there. So yeah, go and find it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And then the other thing is, when it comes to experience, one of the things I've helped people do is complete their PMP applications. And when people say, well, I'm not experienced, I'm like, have you thought about doing volunteer work? And a volunteer work is a great way to get project management experience. You're nodding your head, Peter. You have any experience in this at all?
Oh, I do. Only because I was talking to a gentleman just before I came on this call, and he was just saying, "I want to get into project management." You know, I've been working as a kind of a kind of assistant administrative support for a project office, and it was exactly that. Well, I said, "Well, go volunteer. You know, go find your local community, go and volunteer in your local school, wherever it is. There are projects everywhere, and you'll clock up the hours, you'll clock up the experience, and you're going to find some great mentors as well. Yeah, go do it again."
Yeah, I will tell you just a quick story on this is that I had a friend and she was saying, I want to go into project management. She helped to organize a local 5K race. She did such a phenomenal job as a volunteer that she eventually became a major event planner, which is major project planning, event planning.
Mm.
Planning these road races that people do, and it's really phenomenal how she went from being a volunteer to suddenly very much in demand and planning big races that people are like, oh, I know those races. So it's phenomenal how your volunteer work can also lead to career moves as well.
Yeah, great story. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. I'm looking through the different questions here. One of the questions about the PhD in project management, I would say very, very rarely do you really need a PhD for project managers overall. A lot of what you get, experience, certifications, some degrees, but it is a bit different around the world. What's your advice on that, Peter?
Again, I think it depends where you want to go in your career. I mean, what's great is the rise of project management in increasingly in MBAs. You're going to see it. Increasingly, you're seeing degrees out there in project management. I get excited because I'm from the generation of the accidental project manager, and hell, right now we're in the age of the intentional project manager. These people mean it. They either mean it as a career that out and out, or they see it as a sensible and logical step in their business career to understand projects. So I think, go for the qualification that suits what your needs are right now, what your aspirations are. And, I'm certified in a number of the communities out there. But reality is, my experience is what really counts. And the certification is a badge that supports that in some areas. Some people like it and other people don't like it, but it's do what you need to do.
Yeah, so really good advice there on the, be aware in the communities and the jobs that you're looking at, what kind of certs they're looking for. And then don't get too many certs as well, because they're hard to maintain. Like once you get them, like kind of figure out which ones are the ones that are like the most valuable.
You look on LinkedIn, there's some crazy ones. Actually, some people have got more letters after their name than you think was physically possible. But, I'm saying nothing.
Well, we're about ready to close up and wrap up the session. First of all, Peter, I really just want to thank you for being here and being part of the community. I also want to always thank Saeed and the administrative team for hosting us, having us here. They do amazing content. Here's what I'm going to say about this community. If you are ever looking for a project management template in almost any language you can imagine, this is the first site that I would go to and try to get that information. So just thank you to Saeed and team. Thank you to Peter for being here today from the UK. Peter, any last closing comments you'd like to make?
Let's build the community. So go find me. lazyprojectmanager.com is my website, and I'm happy to talk to anybody. So thank you for having me, Amy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day. I'm putting your website in right now, manager.com. Perfect. And so link into Peter, check out his website. And thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic day and a great weekend.
All right. Bye.